Today on the Next, our guest is Jesse Winchester. Jesse was a professional ice hockey player in the NHL from 2008 to 2016 with the Senators, the Panthers, and the Avalanche, and then spent over 5 years with the Senators in their player development organization from 2019 to 2024. I first met Jesse when I was focused on the energy transition with MCJ, and Jesse had left the game and was looking to move in that direction. And we kept in touch. He's a fantastic guy. And when I started heading on the path of building a new kind of athlete development platform, starting in hockey, Jesse was one of my first calls. We have a great discussion in this episode about his nonlinear path to the NHL, his late blooming as a player, and the critical importance of work ethic and passion. We talk through his career and how much of the game was self-directed and how much of it came from his family in the earliest years, when he knew that he had a shot of making it to the show, how that journey went. We contrast the landscape of the game when he was growing up versus the landscape today. And we also just talk about some of the nuances of how skill is increasing and in some ways at the expense of hockey IQ, and where a platform like the one that I'm envisioning might be able to help. This is a great one, and I hope you enjoy it. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Jason.
Thanks for coming. Gosh, I'm so excited. I got to know you a little bit back when I was doing MCJ, and you were thinking about climate stuff. And I remember that conversation well. I actually brought my little guy with me at the time. This was many years ago. He was a lot littler then, and that was a big thrill for him because you have a long career in the NHL, and he loves the sport of hockey. But at any rate, fast forward to today, and I'm heading out to build this platform in youth sports, starting in hockey, focused on player development. And here you are with a long career in the NHL, and then a long career in player development. And gosh, that's just beyond relevant for what I'm thinking about. So I'm so grateful for you making the time.
No, I'm excited to get into it. So, I did.
I mean, my first thing for you is, so I had Colin Wilson on the show, and his dad played in the NHL, his grandfather played in the NHL, and he told me that he knew when he was 9 years old that he was going to make it. He just believed that. And then I had Matt Calvert on the show, and his parents weren't very athletic, and when he was 18, he still dreamed of being an accountant. And then he went on and had a great career in the show. So tell me about your path, Jesse.
Yeah, my path was probably more in line with Calvert's path. I was more of a late bloomer, I guess you'd say. I was passed over in all the drafts, the OHL. The NHL, it was kind of a long shot to be, to think that I didn't be selected. But you know what? It wasn't something that I didn't think I could ever do. Like, I had the hope and I had the dream. I had the work ethic, and I just had to be patient in my journey. I went to Colgate University, played 4 years there, and then was so fortunate to sign with my hometown team in Ottawa. Begin my NHL journey there before moving on, to Florida after a brief stint in Europe, and then it ended in Colorado, and I transitioned into coaching and player development, which, I'm getting to live my life in the NHL in a different way. It was really, really rewarding, and grateful for my experience in the game.
And you said that you had the work ethic. Where did that work ethic come from? And when did it first start showing up?
Well, I think it's just a long-standing obsession with the game. I loved everything about it. So just loved experimenting, loved learning, loved challenging myself. Wasn't afraid to challenge my body physically. So I just loved everything the game had to offer. So I put everything I had to offer back into the game, and it seemed to work out in my favor. So.
Were you single sport from a little guy, or did you play other stuff too?
No, my introduction to the game kind of predates like the single sport narrative that we see everywhere today. Like, I did play a little bit of soccer, I played golf, but we were just outside all the time. So in the summer, I grew up in a smaller town, so the access to ice wasn't really there. I played summer hockey for one season, and my parents said that's enough. We're on the road all winter. We got two brothers. Let's figure out a different way to do this. So we were big into the outdoors, and, that's something I really value now in life with my kids. But when the time came to really commit myself through the game fully around the clock, there's an easy choice to make for me personally. So when I arrived at it maybe differently than kids today are getting to that realization.
When did you arrive at that?
If you ask my parents, I was probably determined since I was 6, but with their guidance, when I first started getting to the gym, I was 14, 15, 16 years old. So a bit behind today's curve. We didn't have access to skill development coaches and all these things that, seem to be the norm today. But my buddies and I were outside playing on outdoor rinks all day, every day in the winter. And we didn't have organized games. We were playing in the driveways. We were just active kids. And I think as, I got into puberty and kind of, started to decide how I wanted to see my life take shape, it was more of an effort on their part to get me to the gym, get me to these places. But it kind of happened naturally a bit later than most, I'd say.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it seems like, there's a few dynamics that have changed from when we were growing up. One is that there was just a lot more kind of free range kids, right? That just went out and did their own thing. And people talk now about how that's what kids should do, but there's a problem, right? Because it's like, okay, that's the decision I'm going to make for my kid. Okay, go out and be a free range kid with all the other kids in the neighborhood. It's like, wait, there's no kids in the neighborhood because everyone else is on the scheduled track, right? So it's a bit of like, you can't do it without everyone else doing it, and then no one else can do it without you doing it, so then no one does it, right? So that's one difference. Another difference is that it seems like, people like back in the day kind of fell into the pro path just because they loved the game and they were playing it, and then it just kind of one thing led to another, whereas now there's a lot more kind of grooming from the youngest ages by the parents, right? And then, of course, now there's a rise of so much more resources from the youngest age for that grooming, but there's different schools of thought. One is that it's like, well, if you get them into the best preschool, then they'll get into the best this, and the best this gets them into the best that, and that. And you miss the train when they're 4, like, don't even bother, right? And then the other school of thought is they're going to end up where they're meant to be and just that. So I guess, how does that jive based on, relative to what you're seeing? And also, what do you think about the state of the state?
So many good questions. Have you read the book Range, by any chance?
No. Gosh, doing all these podcasts give me all these great book suggestions, but I'm so busy recording that I don't have fucking time to read. So, but I'm going to write that down. But anyways, I haven't read it, but now I'm going to put it on my list, but go ahead.
But it goes into the different types of personalities, how people learn, how people kind of find their way. And it kind of causes to decide like the idea of like a tidy notion or a tidy prescription to do, I know, in the way you do things. And then there's a lot of randomness. And what I found is like, you can have these discussions and there's no right answer. Everybody's so different. Everybody learned at different times. They mature at different times. You're able to handle something. For me, it was always coming back to like keeping it very, very simple. Like, how much do I love it? And how hard am I willing to work at it? And I was by no means like a top prospect at any level, but I had those things and that kind of shielded me from all the things that kind of can steal your attention. So I guess I love to have the debates and I don't understand, but I'm not really on one side of the spectrum or the other. I just like to see kids enjoy their experience in the game. Number one, when they leave the game, in my case, after a long career or someone after college or after minor hockey, I want them to be able to look back and say it was worth it and they've enjoyed their experience. So assuming we can check off all these boxes in whichever way or whichever path kids go down, I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have. But I don't think there is a right or a wrong. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, I'm just trying to figure it out for me, but then whatever I figure out for me doesn't mean that's going to be right for the person on my left or the person on my right. And then to think about building a platform that's going to help lots of people, it's like, well, gosh, there's so many questions there, because if different paths make sense for different people, then then how do you standardize on a platform? Like, does the platform just have extreme customization where it's completely personalized depending on each kid and each family's desires and needs and wants and logistics? And so that's all the stuff I'm sorting through. But it Go ahead, Jesse.
I love that debate and that thought process and how you're coming to a vision and how to build something. Like in our earlier discussions, I just leave each one fascinated by how you're trying to attack the problem, much like you did with your MCJ and learning in public about climate. And that's originally the kinds of things, like it's curiosity based and you're open to people's opinions. And I think in hockey, it's the same. Anything you're trying to build, it's that openness and curiosity that's going to help fuel the fire. So that's why I think, obviously, you're going down a worthy path, like you, and it's going to work for so many people.
I hope so. As someone who's played the game at the highest levels and who also has focused on developing players at the highest levels, are there any, but who also just said that everyone's path is different, right? Are there any commonalities that you see in terms of the players that make it to the top? And if so, what are they?
Even within that very small extra people playing globally that end up making it at the top, there's a wide range of skill. There's a wide range of interest outside. Everybody's different. Having said that, they reach the level at different times, and they have to show different roles within a team. But yeah, my job was to kind of help the player mature behind the scenes so that then when they came to us as draft picks, they improved the point where they became assets for our team on the ice. So for some, like a Tim Stutzel, I really have no impact on him. He's like such a talent. He enters NHL because he's just so God-given skill, and he's going to be a superstar. And then the coaching staff grooms him over time. There's players who take 3, 4, 5 years in the time they're drafted who make smaller gains and who aren't going to be the guys who dazzle on the ice, but who provide real value to the team as it moves forward. And that was more of my job, making sure things were aligned so that when they get to that point where the lights are the brightest, they can keep things simple and really enjoy their experience, like, and make the most of it. Stay connected to the moment. The same things you're hearing the Florida Panthers speak of in their media days right now during the Stanley Cup Finals are the same kinds of things we preached about, managing, like what you can manage in this big world of fast moving parts, and so you can enjoy it and take what you like, get the most out of a shoot for the team, but also personally.
Well, I also hear different narratives about the pre-puberty era, right? Because on the one hand, it's like, look, your kid's not going to the show because if he was, you would know it because he'd be playing 3 levels up and it'd be freaking obvious since he was in diapers, right? And then the other side, it's like, who cares about what happens at 0 to 15 because everything changes anyways and you have no idea. No one has any idea. And like, why even bother to have any idea? Just have fun with it because it's all because like the cards aren't going to sort themselves out until later, and it's not going to be based on anything even that you're doing now. So like, those are such opposite extremes. Like, what's the truth?
The truth lies in the middle somewhere. Right? I can speak to my experience personally as a player, where if you looked at me at 20 years old, you wouldn't have said I was necessarily an NHL player. Did I have some traits that maybe we could see and there's a certain level of potential there? Maybe, but I was under the radar my entire life. And in my coaching experience,
come on, you were captain of a Division I team like that. So I guess it's all relative, right? I mean, that's still that I wouldn't call that under the radar.
No, it was a very cool experience playing Division I hockey, but there's still so many big jumps that you have to make in order to get to the next level. So my point in all that is, whenever we sign somebody, or when I did work with the Sens, the draft picks for the Sens, we can't always tell if they're going to play in the NHL, and they're so close to playing in the NHL. So when you roll that back to kids, yeah, there's the exceptions, the few that are just so far beyond everyone else that they're given age, and they're obvious. It doesn't take but this still so much has to go right for them as they grow and mature in order to get to the NHL. Most they'll be good, really good players, but you can't say for sure that they're going to end up playing because there's just so much runway between where they're at and where they have to go, and changing lifestyle stuff behind the scenes, the impact of pressure, the impact of agents, all this noise, and how they are able to handle that as they grow older. But it's a great discussion to have, and that was part of what was so rewarding in my experience as a player development coach, was trying to find ways to help these players weave it all together and find their way to the NHL.
Okay. Building off of that, it is unbelievable the level of commitment it takes from parents to shepherd their kids through the journey today. Yes. It's a cost commitment. It's a logistics commitment. It's an education commitment. It isn't the player navigating, it's the player and the parent, right? And given how much travel's involved and how much what team you're playing on matters and everything else, like, it has to be the player and the parent, because like a little tyke isn't going to navigate through that. A little tyke doesn't have a wallet, a little, like, the parent has to be involved, right? For better or for worse. Like, like, granted, there's downsides to that, because then it's like, well, am I living vicariously or is it my kid's dream? But like, there's kind of no alternative to play the game competitively today. So here's my question. Given that, right, is it healthy for a parent to aspire on behalf of their kid?
Oh my goodness. I've seen it go right, and I've seen it go wrongly. Just such great questions again, but I'm not the guy to give you the best answer.
I don't have the answer. Like, I'm a crazy hockey dad. Yeah. I don't have the answer. Like, I wrestle with it every day. So, yeah. I know my kid's not going to the show for sure, but like, that doesn't, even helping them reach their fullest form. It's like, and by the way, not just with athletics, like, right, with like the schooling path, it's like how much structure you provide, how much you let them fall on their own sword and make their own mistakes. Like, how is helping them keep the train on the tracks, best for their long-term development or detrimental to their long-term development? Like, it's kind of all related.
Yeah. And what? Shit. I'm going through the same things with my kids. I don't play hockey. I have 2 young daughters, but the same questions I ask myself every day. Getting to am I doing it right? Am I being a good parent? I think for me, what comes most naturally is exposing them, giving them opportunity to try a ton of different things, almost seeing what sticks, and then, empowering them to find that path or explore on their own first. And then if it becomes something they really enjoy doing, then I kind of come in the background to fully support, I guess. But again, I haven't quite reached that point as minus than like the exploratory, a ton of things coming at them. And that's the approach that my wife and I have taken. My parent.
Hey, Jesse, remind me, how old are your girls?
9 and 7. So one is extremely athletic. They're both into sports, but one is like a really good athlete. And there's discussion about how to navigate the next steps of their development, and these conversations we have in the background. And I think there's a definite love of a sport there that we see, and it's about, and we're having these discussions like this week. It's stuff that goes on day to day in our household, and we just like to make a decision that to support while she kind of jumps into this next stage of training. And we're there for her, and we will always be there for her, just like all parents we hope will be there for their kids. And bringing that back to my experience, my parents, they had 3 boys. We all played sports. They did whatever they could possibly to support us, but they didn't force us to play. They stressed school first. We've had to call our coaches to tell them that we couldn't come to practice because we didn't do our school. We didn't live up to the background contract that we made in our family to do things a certain way. And, it was all about learning for us, learning through experience. And for me, and it just happened at the right time. And hockey kind of became this lifelong obsession. And
you got a great education in the process, academically.
Yeah. At the time, I was just young and naive and probably didn't even realize the quality of education, and was just there doing the work. And trying to, like, I love the school part, but I look back more fondly now, like, oh my gosh, everything I was privy to, the learning experience outside the rank, like, very, very fortunate now as I grow older. And, that's just an aside, but it was, yeah, my parents kind of in the background, letting us drive, but them kind of not letting us get off the road.
I mean, I'm even as I'm starting to make the rounds and talk to people that have played the game at the highest levels that are now raising kids, the differences are stark, right? In some households, it's like hands off and they find their own way and they do what they love and I'm here to support. And then in other households, it's like, I got them in skates for the time or two. And we got this this skating coach and that and this and that. And it's like, when you do that, right, it's like, oh, they know no other way and they're just used to it and they fall into the pattern recognition and that's just what they do. But they didn't have a chance to self-select, right? And so I talked to a sports psychologist recently who trains some of the most elite youth players in the game. And of course, everyone's going to roll their eyes and say, okay, stop with the elite youth players. It's like, well, like, because look, everything changes that. But like elite just meaning that like they're making a lot of sacrifices and doing a lot and showing promise at that point in time, snapshot for whatever they are in their development path, right? But what he said was that there's a stark difference between the amount of dads who think that their kids are doing it because they love it, and then when you talk to the kids without their parents in the room, the kids that actually love it, and that's really troubling, right? And yet, like, kids are getting put on the quote unquote serious path before they have the mental capacity to determine whether they want to be on that serious path. So whereas earlier it was like, I feel like growing up, like you ended up on the serious path because it just happened naturally. Because I mean, maybe there are stories about the crazy, the crazy parents who groomed their kids from the youngest ages. But I feel like back then it was an anomaly, and now it's almost the norm.
Yeah, bringing it back to that book again. Like they go into how Tiger Woods became a pro, like this through rigid practice from the time he was 2. But then in contrast, they talk about Roger Federer, who is the world-class tennis player that he is, and kind of not really taking it super seriously until, 12, 13, 14 years old. And you have 2 of the very best to ever play their sports arriving at things. And it just reinforces the differences between people and the way they perceive the world. I think, like, one of the most important conversations I'd had with some military friends who operate at a high level, they've used the term, and it may be from a book, but I'm not sure. So they use the term purpose over process. So they look for people who have a sense of purpose. So I guess in bringing up our kids, we're trying to let them find a sense of purpose around something, the practice side of it, or like the exploration. And then it's on me after that. I can provide the structure. And that's just my parenting style. It's where I have buddies who have taken a different approach and have raised incredible young players too, like hockey players. But I always go back to that conversation of how are these guys, and found it so interesting that the process, the buzzword and all these training jargon, but when they select for people, they're looking for people who have that, like, a certain level of grit or purpose behind the things that they do when identify talent or potential people that they will work with. So again, like, I just love the banter, really, and trying to uncover ways to find, a path forward for people given all their different experience.
Well, I don't want to make this about my kid, because I'm doing this for the love of the sport and love of athlete development and loving helping myself and others reach their fullest form. And that's also what I'm trying to do as a dad.
Yeah.
But one of my hockey kid, he's a bit confusing, right? Because you can take him around to endless stuff, dialed in, fired up, like wagging his tail, incredible work ethic, right? And it's almost like like endless. Like it almost doesn't matter how much you load him up. Like he loves it and he's dialed in and he busts his ass, right? But then in between at home, if you want him to get to do stuff in between, right? Like he'll do it when you remind him, right? But he isn't necessarily seeking it out on his own. And you can say, well, if you didn't overschedule him so much, he would have more time. But like, I don't actually know if that's true. Like, I feel like if the plate was empty, it might be the same. And that's confusing because it's like, well, is he self-directed or not? Because it's like, well, busts his butt, loves the game, fired up whenever you do it. But hasn't quite connected the dots about if I want to get to this place, like here's the things that I need to do, or just living in the moment. So is providing structure for someone like that, is it helpful? And he even asks for structure. He's like, if you give me more structure, I want to do this stuff, but there's just so many distractions at home, right? So it's like he's asking for it, right? But like, is it helpful or harmful to his long-term development to provide it, right? Like, I don't just wrestle with that for him. I wrestle with that for anything I might build for others as well, which is why I'm pushing on these questions now, because like, I don't want to be part of the problem.
Here's how I answer that one. I think he, just knowing you in the way that I do know you, the limited time we've had together, you're pretty self-directed, motivated, curious, hardworking. I think he's going to probably in some ways adopt the good of all those, or take the good in all those traits from you. And it doesn't have to be.
But I wasn't like that growing up, though.
Right. But it doesn't. Every little thing, like I think big picture when he's, and you're going to zoom out, your kids are learning from you all the time. And I think by providing them, with a household or the way in which you live your life, and we're going to take the good, I would imagine being self-directed and self-led, curious, and all these things are going to transfer to him in time. And when if it's hockey or these business related things, if you're able to build out of nothing, he will find his way. And I think that's the whole point of sport and parenting in the end. Like, and hopefully they have a great experience in doing all these things.
Well, I was kind of directionless when I was young, and I still regret that now that I'm older. And so I'm trying to do it differently with my kids. But I think we might have talked about this in one of our discussions, Jesse, but it's almost like if I had more framework and pushing or whatever when I was young and the wheels stayed better on the tracks, would it have actually muted my ambition when the switch flipped on my own later on? Maybe. So it's almost like by providing that, right? Are you helping to instill long-term habits and make sure that the train stays on the tracks and that they're not going to look back with regret because they held it together and learn what success feels like and equate hard work and process with results, and right, that all that's positive, right? But it's like, if you're providing it externally, are you inhibiting them from learning how to, from finding their own way to providing it on their own, right? And I really don't know.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy. Like, I will say that going back to the player development side of my career, it was sometimes exciting when you had a kid who was still raw, like at 18 years old, who didn't, and you don't expect anyone to have it all figured out, but it just meant that there was potentially more room to grow. And when you match that with certain skills and physical traits and a willingness to meet you halfway and learn, it provides for an exciting kind of trajectory. And sometimes it happens, when the kid's leaving college at 20 or 21 and they think they're going right to the NHL and it takes another 2 years, but it's about all the things coming together just at a right time that then you can, in the case of the NHL, as a player, capitalize on for yourself, but then also just the life experience you get from playing in that league. And the ability just you don't have to have it all figured out to still make it work. I don't think he's a perfect player out there. And it was just exciting to see sometimes those kids who may have been lesser priority kind of find their way.
So I want to ask you this then. You kind of lit up when I started telling you about this area that I'm focused on, and you're excited about the possibilities. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've told me offline that you're excited about the possibilities of what I might build here. So I want to ask you this multiple ways. I want to ask you, like, what kind of platform would, like, what should I build here, right? But I also want to ask it through the lens of, one, you've been through the development path. Two, you've helped others through the development path. Three, you have two girls who are gymnasts, and they also are different from each other. But given all of that, yeah, like, what is it that you're envisioning when you light up thinking about, something filling a void? Like, what is the void that you see being filled, and how?
Nah, how much time do we have? So I'll say, I'll begin with this. This is my first winter where I've been on the ice with young kids, and I've loved the experience. I was offered to help out with alongside like the Sens state coach, who's done a great job with Sens players, Sens prospects, but also has her own business beyond the Sens. We worked together closely in our time with the Sens, and she brought me on board without having really ever skated with kids. So my eyes were opened from day one, and it was slow, a couple tires, but I kept coming back, and I've really, really loved it. And what I've seen is just so much emphasis on like the skill, which is great, and even in the drills that I've run. But then when you offer some kind of competition or gameplay scenario where they're playing against their friends, they light up. So in building the next phase of your model, maybe it's emphasizing that incorporating skill and all the things that we want, but then also that component of whether it's compete or play, where they're being creative. It's creativity, and it's learning while doing. That's what excites me, because I see their faces light up when you suggest, "Oh, do you want to play this game?" And it's not a hockey game, but it's just any kind of tag or And I think it's something at a young age that we have to always remind ourselves of why we played first and foremost.
Gosh, it's kind of what I'm about to say is kind of sad, but I'm gonna try to say it anyways. It seems like growing up, you knew that if someone was playing, there was joy, and now we've so manufactured the process, right, that you don't actually know like where the joy is, and we've layered in development without factoring in joy. And so essentially, it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is we need to find a way to take these components of development, now that everyone's on the development path from a young age, right, and reinsert joy, at least as it relates to, and you can do that in person, because it's like, oh, well, like in the in-person skills, like, okay, we're going to incorporate pucks, and we're going to incorporate goalies, and we're going to incorporate compete, right, and we're going to incorporate 3-on-3, small sheet gameplay, and stuff like that. So there's ways to do that in person. But when it comes to the home stuff, it's like, all right, get out the agility ladder, go shoot 500 pucks, right? Like it's like flossing your teeth, right? It's like it's like doing your homework. Like it's not packaged in a way that's fun. So essentially, taking like your vegetables essentially and delivering them in a recipe that's actually delicious, forgetting about whether it's healthy. Like, it sounds like that's what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Because you can't just go out and do free range play, because that doesn't exist. Maybe in some parts of the world in little pockets, but like, I mean, that's how my neighborhood was growing up. Like, all the kids were just out playing every sport all the time. Like, they're not.
Like I think, and again, just drawing off of personal experience again, but I was excited to play growing up because you just receive fulfillment from being with your buddies, making plays, competing together, trying to win games, and recognition that, yes, all these skills are so important if your end goal is to climb and be elite and be an NHL player. And it takes everything. But I think the most important thing for me is that intrinsic motivation to play, which is what I see when you offer up a gameplay scenario where kids just light up and go at it. Like, it's different. They are able to work through the drills. They're able to do everything, and they're great. But it's the smile and things you're like, oh, do you want to play 1-on-1, or do you want to play crossbar post, whatever? Do you want to play a 2-on-1 game? And it's just like automatic. Yes, let's play like that. On that,
but this kind of pisses me off because there's this narrative, right, that like if your kid isn't psyched to get home and go to a dingy basement and shoot 500 pucks, then they don't love the game, right? And it's like, actually, if there was just, if I lived in a part of the world like you did growing up where it was like negative degrees for months at a time and there were always a zillion kids out playing hockey, right? Like, do I worry that my son would? Of course he'd be out there. And I would not have to ever tell him once, right? So it's almost like it's not fair to, like, yes, certain kids are wired in a way where like they're gonna go and do that stuff. But even then, though, I wonder, are those kids that are posting clips of themselves doing that every day, like, are they actually doing that because they're choosing to do it, or are they doing it because dad's standing there with a camera telling them that they have to,
Who knows? But right,
For sure.
did not feel like doing things every day, and I needed to take a step back, at different times in my life and career to kind of refine or rediscover that, the love of things. Like even going through leaving my most current role with the Spans, there's a little bit of like a lull after where I don't feel like being involved in hockey right now, but then you rediscover that you can't just do it every day around the clock. Like we aren't robots, but the people who do love it are able to find ways and prioritize it as they grow and find ways to enjoy the mundane, I think. But I didn't want to shoot pucks every single day of my life whenever, it's beautiful outside and I have other friends and other activities going on. And my parents respected that, but they also were real and teaching me like, look, you have this goal, this dream, and we're here for it. But know that there's someone out there who is just as good as you, who is spending that time doing these things, and then they will get better in time if they stick to it, and you decide not to. If you guys talent levels are equal, so if you have this goal, make sure that you're doing the things that you can to make it happen. If what you're saying is what you want to live.
Those are the kinds of discussions that we have too. We talk about how, hey, like, over the past few years, bud, you've been doing all this stuff and, I've been out laying it out for you. And, when you complain, we dial it back and you almost never complain. I know you love it. Right. But like in the next few years, dude, like, you're going to have to start taking the reins and I'm not going to force you. Like you're going to, cause I'm not going to be around. Like, you're going to be the captain of your own ship and you're going to decide what things I seek out and what I don't. And by the way, you don't need to play at the highest levels of the game, but you don't need to put it all into hockey. But if you aspire to take it as far as you can, right, it's ultra competitive. And these are the things that you would need to do to get to where you want to go. But ultimately, you need to decide where you want to go. And if you want to go in a different direction, that's fine too, buddy. But I just don't want you to be blindsided. Like, just understand that every decision you make has implications.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but it's hard. And then you tell that to a 13-year-old and you hope that they're listening and internalizing it deeply. And then what you get back is, could I play Xbox? Wait, what'd you just say? I was just, thinking about like my Brawl Stars score or something. Man, come on, dude, you're killing me. Now, there's another narrative I wanted to pull on, which is that there's this kind of narrative that with the rise of skill coaches, that the game is getting so much more skilled at the youth level. And with the rise of social media, right, that, a lot of kids are spending less time watching full games and more time watching a clip of this Michigan or, watching this kid, dance through four players on the other team and go bar down or whatever, right? And so the skill level's been rising, but hockey IQ's been suffering. What is your assessment of the state of the state there? And of course, then we can talk about what to do about it. But before we even get to that, just like, what are you seeing?
I think the game is way more skilled. I think the guys work at their craft and have more access to more resources on that side of it. Yeah, I remember a few clips from John Tortorella that went viral talking about how the game has, or the league has become a dumb league, and players are more entitled, and because they have these entourages around them that kind of build expectation to how things go without necessarily having to learn to take your turn within the team. I think the game is great. I love it. I'm a diehard fan in the NHL playoffs right now. They're smart. They're dialed in. Like they operate within the system that the team wants to play. But they also, there's more guys with more game breaking skill, which makes when there is a breakdown, they're just that much better at exposing it, I think. So I think there is hockey IQ. I don't think guys are necessarily, I don't think the old guard was necessarily smart. I think the game is probably a bit slower. I think it is more, I just find it hard to believe that if all the skill is getting better, that understanding isn't too. Having, with that, again, like, I don't know the answer. If you're so just focused on pure skill and you're not surrounding yourself with gameplay setting, then yeah, you're not learning to read, learning to deceive on the ice, learning to see layers, learning to play within the context of the team. But at the top level, I think but the game is incredible, and I don't think it's there's a lack of hockey IQ in the NHL. They're exceptional. Maybe it trickles down, but again, I haven't been around enough to see. Everybody's learning all the time, whether it's the skill or all these imperfect or unfinished products, and we'll see. And when they end up getting to a top level, the game is so good. Like I don't see it really as a lack of IQ, maybe.
Maybe I'll ask it a different way. So a lot of parents cart their kids around and focus on skill development. They're getting stronger, they're getting faster, they're getting better with their edge work. They're working on their shooting form. They're working on what else are they working on? They're playing in lots of tournaments and playing with different kids at different ability levels and things like that. What they aren't doing as much is actually watching video.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Yeah. So, for example, coaches will try to, it's like, hey, we'll do a video session at the rink and, everyone get there 20 minutes early. And then all the parents are like, dude, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to, it's like 2 hours in rush hour, buddy. Like, I can't, I'm already leaving work 2 hours before I should. Like, another 20 minutes actually matters, right? And then it's like, does rink even have AV, right? And then, it's like, oh, the Wi-Fi's down, right? And then it's like, you get everyone together and it's like, all right, there's like 20 people in a room and then everyone's goofing off and having trouble paying attention. And, the coach might pull a few, but like it's, the coach is doing everything in their power and bending over backwards, right? And most of these youth coaches, like, don't get paid a dime, right? And so like, it's no fault of the coach, but it's like, ideally, I think you know it well more than me, but it would benefit the kid to go through and like actually review what they've been doing in games, and then make them teachable moments. Like, hey, that decision making there, I really like. And over here, that wasn't a bad decision, but there's a few others you might have considered, right? And maybe in this one, it would have been a lower risk play. It worked out in the end, but I don't know if I would do that again in that same situation, probability wise. And stuff like that. And but there's just, there's not enough bandwidth for that. And then, so the dad will try, right? The dad will go and like, pull the clips, right? But like, I played the game through, like, I quit partway into sophomore year, Division 3, like I barely, but like still, that's a lot more than a lot of the dads, right? And I'm like, I watch this clip, I'm like, I'll try to give you feedback, dude, but like, I don't even really know what I'm talking about. And so it's like, imagine if you're like all these dads that never played the game at all, right? Do you think that something in that direction would be, and by the way, actually, run-on question here, but it doesn't even necessarily need to be your shifts. Like, what about just watching an NHL game, watching a college game, and pointing that stuff out with a trained eye, right? Is there anything over there that would be valuable for these kids coming up, and if so, what? Yeah.
Again, just amplifying, like looking at the course of the season maybe and looking at where you can have the biggest impact. So finding the few things that you can reinforce in the very few instances that you're going to be able to provide video for your team at the youth level. So for me, off the top of my head, it would be things like in transition, when the puck turns over, making sure each kid is taking 3 hard strides. So that we're like, when the puck goes from side to like end to end, it's like that change is where a lot of good or bad can happen. A rush the other way. So it's reinforcing that. So as you're watching video, but I'd work on that in practice. I don't think I would be a coach, the level over coaching, crazy structure. You know, I had the experience of coaching Junior A, which is basically a feeder to the NCAA. And I walked in the first day with no prior experience, and I was ready to do my NHL PK that I played within this. And the kids weren't at that time ready to, or they weren't at a level where they could process all the little things that went into it. That's not to say they weren't great players, but it was a way of teaching the game more simply to emphasize the most important parts, which in our system was pressure up ice. Couldn't expect them to have perfect sticks because I didn't have a perfect stick my entire life, but I could explain to them when they needed to be more aware of potential risky situations on the ice. And but it was taking that longer view. I couldn't expect everybody to learn and listen in the first video session. And it was just highlighting 3 or 4 things that I could take through the year that would really benefit us come the spring when the playoffs rolled around. And that's the best answer I have to that question. And you could take it a million different ways, but I think simple is key. Because the game is just so reactive and fast-paced. And as you learn that IQ, there are certain small details that can give you an advantage. And then as you progress through the levels, you can stack and have the little intricacies of the game that you see in like the Stanley Cup Finals right now.
So if we just role play for a minute, if you were sitting here and you went and you said, and you thought like, what are the biggest things about hockey IQ that like the kids coming up don't know that I think would be useful for them to know? And you went and found clips of examples of it, pulled them, organized them, taught a Zoom class with you and 10 kids on Zoom. Can hockey IQ be taught in that format or in another format off the ice, in between ice sessions, in a way that would actually be beneficial for the kids and beneficial for the game?
Of course it can. Oh man, it's a lot to think about here.
Because that's a very different direction than like package stills training in a way that's fun, right? But we haven't chosen a path yet. I'm pushing on these different areas, and then I mean I have even other paths I could run by you that we're considering here. But the hockey IQ one is interesting because the skills, like there's no substitute for in person, and you can have like a replica that's better than nothing at home, but it's not going to be as good as in person. Whereas like the hockey IQ, like maybe off ice is actually a better format to teach than on the ice. I don't know.
Yeah, all great stuff. It goes back to the individual learner, and again, the IQ I would try to teach is just having that idea for how you want to have your team play as a team in March or April or whenever playoffs start. And then as the coach, again, just finding the core things and then realizing that realizing that they can, there's only a certain amount that you're going to add, but the most important things are like the ability to play free. So you don't want them overthinking in instances. So taking a longer view on the kid, putting them in situations where they will fail and then explaining it to them, but reinforcing that you still have faith in them to be able to handle those situations when the lights get brighter in March and April. So that's how I would teach it. Letting go of the fear of failure, really. And just coaching through that, just being open. That's my philosophy when I sit down with kids doing video. Just making sure you're ready to handle the next time these things happen, and understanding why it's important to add this to your toolkit.
Why are agents building up their player development functions, and what does player development mean in that context?
Hockey's big business. Your agents are identifying talent, potential pros in and around that 15, 14 to 17-year range before you're drafted to the NHL, where you're then passed off to player development coaches involved with those teams. So in trying to prep them, agents do a really good job at prepping them for the draft in certain ways, by providing them experiences to help them mature more quickly. But in terms of gameplay understanding and these other things, they're building out departments to kind of help a player who's not yet drafted understand more holistically how to attack the next 4 or 5 years in their journey in hockey.
Do you think that type of value prop would be helpful or hurtful to open up to others who aren't top draft prospects but might be serious about their own development paths?
Well, that's where I think you have such a intriguing kind of vision or case is, and I don't know how it works or how it presents, but
Me neither, which has frustrated the hell out of me. Yeah.
provide access to those tools for kids who are hungry and wanting to build their games and enjoy that side of it is a very, very cool project or very cool concept to build that.
I mean, the issue though is that, you're largely, I think, selling to parents, right? And then the question is whatever you're providing going to be a healthy form of development or further exacerbate the problems, right? And that's really what I'm pushing on. Like my son or other 13-year-olds like him who are playing the game at a more competitive level, but like not about to get shipped off to live with some billet family at 14, not about to put playing in the juniors ahead of their academic path, not about, there's just like, and he can chart his own path, but like most likely this is about life lessons and learning how to achieve mastery somewhere and about memories more than it's about earning a living playing the game, right? Yeah, and so for those kinds of kids, is the best path hands off, right? Is the best path like providing resources and structure? And if it's providing resources and structure, is it best to come from the parent, right? And if the answer is it depends, well, it depends. Did the parent play in the NHL? Or does the parent never play a sport in his life and wants to support the kid but doesn't know anything about the game and is trying to learn it on the fly and just competing with the Joneses because he doesn't know what else to do, right? And so my thought is, for that parent, is there a healthier way that can almost like relieve the parent of feeling that accountability and being reckless, right? And actually providing more sanity to the process, right? And I don't know what that means, but that, I guess, like, what would you build if you were building something for that kid? And I know your girls are younger, so maybe you don't know yet.
Like, what I appreciate is you're so thoughtful about it, taking in, so many different ideas and not necessarily opinions or viewpoints, but just getting an entire lay of the land. And then I think you're well on your way to finding something that, does a ton of good for a ton of kids and providing access to parents and kids to do it for gymnastics. Like, 'cause I know nothing about it. It's like, but if my kid was end up loving this, then I will need help. So I can put myself in that seat where I have no experience in it. And I just want to see my kid be challenged and enjoy rising to the challenge. But I also know what good coaching is. So I think you're on your way to doing that because you're so open-minded to building like and that treats people the right way.
We'll see. I mean, my spidey sense as a dad and as a founder is like, this is fertile ground. This is fertile ground, right? And then I'm talking to lots of smart, well-placed people like you, and it's unbelievable the batting average of these fancy people that are like, I want to be involved in some way. This is awesome. I love that you're doing this. There's so much room here. And like, I feel that way. You feel that way. They feel that way. And then it's like, well, what the F is? No answers, right? Yeah. So, yeah. I'm confident we're going to sort through it, but I'm just impatient as all hell and also I think I'm afraid to just get it wrong, right? I don't want to end up putting capitalism at odds with the best path for the kids, right? And that is, I mean, it's kind of like climate change, where capitalism and the energy transition are aligned. It's good for everybody. When capitalism and what's best for the long-term interests of the planet and the people on it are at odds, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like you're on borrowed time, right? And I feel like in some ways hockey's on a similar path, right? Like there's some elements of it where it's aligned, where it's like, oh, the fact that it's privatized, it adds the skill level, it provides more resources, it creates more opportunities, it creates more memories, more opportunities to see the world, more friendships, more exposed to different people in different parts of the world with different, like you can go on, right? But then it's like, all right, but like leads to burnout, leads to over specialization, leads to overuse injuries, leads to doing something to please others versus figuring out what makes you happy, right? And so what's the truth, right? And yeah, maybe I'm just thinking too much. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I do see the way you were thinking about it and the way you kind of explored your journey with MCJ, where you open up your journey in that way, considering a wide range of things and looking at the best way to make sense of it for you. And it comes back to that with hockey. It's going to be, there's an end goal for a lot of people, but we all have, I've said it countless times already, but just those different experiences and resources, and try to find a way to mesh all those things together. And so that in the end, when you leave that game, you've enjoyed your experience and it's helped you for the next stage of your life, which in my case, hockey has. And that's why I enjoy working with kids to give back and hopefully help in some way shape their experience so that they leave the game like with a kind of good.
Maybe I'll ask one last question, which is just in your own development path as you were coming up, do you look back and wish that there was, like, what resources do you wish were available to you that weren't, or yeah, to the extent that you have them?
I don't have to look very far down the road than to see the person that I am able to get on the ice with now. I would have really benefited from private skating lessons, to be quite honest. I had a lot of power and I was a very hard worker, but not an efficient skater even at the NHL level. So a lot of my energy was wasted trying to get around the ice. And when you're expending so much energy there, I think you're less able to slow things down potentially in your mind. But so that's one of the skills that as a kid, I wish I could become more efficient as a skater if I could roll back the clock. But, I maxed out my abilities, I think, and given what was available to me and the resources I had at my disposal. And it was at a time where there wasn't access the same way, not in my hometown anyway. And I loved living where like I loved growing up and having that space between being on ice every day and living rural and enjoying like the outdoor, the break in sport.
Well, we're showered with resources here in the New England area, but the skating, there's some great skating coaches, but yet everyone I know is seeking, and because all the great ones are impossible to book with. So it seems like there's a supply and demand mismatch. And so that, yeah, I don't know why that is, given how many skills coaches there are for every other kind of skill. It's like, why is skating such a gap, and what can be done to make the best skating instruction available to more people? Like it almost seems like solving that would be more compelling than any digital platform.
And you just look at the McDavids and the guys who can get around the ice the easiest, and then the game just looks easier. And
But are they born with it or not, or does that come from the right instruction?
some guys have it, other guys learn it. I've been lucky throughout the course of this winter to see kids improve so much. Like, and I had no expectation or no idea what I was going to witness by helping out on the ice here, but over the course of 5-6 months, it's not all like this, but when they get something and it clicks and they enter like a new stage of their playing development, it's really nice to see. So again, I wish that if I was growing up today and given the skills that I would have, that would be one area where I'd be spending my resources and my time and effort.
What's next for you, Jesse? What are you up to now, and what do you want to be up to?
It's a great question. I believe the Sens last year, and part of it, looking for just a different challenge, I think. I'm not sure where that ends up. I've enjoyed like a winter and spring of a little bit different pace. I've really loved being a fan of the game again, introducing my kids to that side of it, by taking them to games. But I don't have like a real answer, right? I like to work with good people, motivated people, but I don't have a clear vision just yet of where I'm going to end up.
Do you think it'll be in the game in some way?
I think I will always maintain some kind of paw or foot in the game, but it's trying to find that balance between my other interests, my family life, and and that's always changing too. And I do love coaching, so we'll see where it ends up. But I'm lucky we're in a great place in Ottawa, have my health, and look forward to things outside the game too right now.
And Jesse, speak to all the hockey parents out there for a minute, or any players that might be listening. What advice do you have for them as they head out on their own development journeys?
I just do it for my parents, I guess. That's the 2 words or 3 or 4 words that always stood the test of time for me, and it's just work hard and have fun. Place those at the center of your hockey journey, and just keep the focus simple and enjoy. Try to make as many friends as you can. Just enjoy yours. I want kids to leave the game having a great experience like I had. So, the simpler it was in my case, the better the outcome. That's not case like that for everybody, but it worked in my case. I go back to that in pretty much everything that I begin to chase down.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just good, sound, rational advice, which seems obvious when you say it, but it's amazing how easy it is to forget when you're when you're kind of in the thick of it. Well, thanks, Jesse, for coming on. I really appreciate learning more about your journey and your thoughts on the sport. I have more questions than answers about my own stuff, but like you said, I'm confident those answers will present in the coming weeks and months, and it's super helpful just to talk through and do some brainstorming with you. So thanks again.
Yeah, I felt there was a lot of talking through stuff. I don't know if I had much in the way of real answers for you, but I do love the back and forth, and I love entertaining so many different kind of ways and ideas, and yeah, I wish you well. I think you're on the right track to get into something cool.
Thanks. When I have more specifics on what I'm actually, when we're about to get serious, I'm gonna come back and talk to you and get some real feedback. So thanks, Jesse. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.